Welcome to another episode in Conversations in the Future of Work. I am your host, Rachel Cossar, and I'm really excited to dive into future of work, recruiting, and what we think is coming on down the pipeline in the next 5 years. So without further ado, Annemarie Penny, welcome to the show.
Hello, glad to be here.
I'd love to hear, share with our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, what you're most excited about these days.
Absolutely. So I'm a three-time founder. Started out KPMG Finance, came to California as a teenager with $200, and really I like to typify my career gratefully as the combination of consistent hard work and authentic relationships. Because at the end of the day, this is about people and always will be. So I launched the first recruiting firm in Los Angeles to focus on .coms back in the 90s before anybody knew what that was. And so it's been a wonderful life, building hundreds of startups, VC-backed, self-funded, everything in between. Many have been acquired by, very, very leading brands, particularly in the technology industry. And at this point, as CEO of Dream More, we are very much embracing the future of work with the perspective that the tools and the technology have changed dramatically over the last 30 or 40 years. But the people, we're still humans. And we're going to run everything through that lens.
Yeah, awesome. I love that perspective. I think it's so easy to get distracted by the noise of technology and to think that things have changed so fundamentally. And in some ways they have, but in many ways they haven't. So you've just mentioned so many different kind of paths in your past, right? So I'd love to know, like, how do you feel? I find transition and evolution is a very fascinating topic to me. And so how do the various threads of your life kind of intersect and weave into this new world of work?
Absolutely. And, this is the thing about the future. And I like to point out to people, we're in the future right now. Every second that goes by, this becomes the future. And so coming out of KPMG Finance, as a very young person, I was trained to always look 5 years out and then back into where are we today. And you can equally say, okay, well, we don't know what the future holds, but we can certainly use some analysis and data to predict. And so part of this year in particular, embracing the future of work as a concept and knowing that in some circles, that just means, HR tech and some tools that are implemented. In other circles, that literally means things that used to be so crazy, like driverless cars and quantum computing. This is also the future of work. And frankly, the future of work is more than just technology. It's really looking at the social construct. So this was very much part of the journey this year, was equally going, let me stop dwelling on what's right in front of me and being reactive and look at 5 years out, where do I think this is heading, and then back into it. Look back in history and go, okay, well, regardless of these things that feel very new and different today, there are all of those common things that don't change, which is our brains are basically formed the same as they were thousands of years ago. And so we can look at historical patterns and even recognize that in its time, the steam engine was technology, the wheel was technology, fire was technology. And so that can actually inform beyond just, oh gosh, AI is going to take our jobs and I don't know what to do about that. And look at it more from, all right, what did we do as people before and how did we react to things? And then how did we survive? And how did we ultimately come together again for that survival? And the last point on this, as it relates to the future of work, everybody has a different mindset around this. And there's a lot of fear mongering right now that really makes me sad, because we don't operate well as people when we're operating from a state of fear. Yeah. And so very much Dream More's approach to this, Dream More has one M in the name, and amore is the Easter egg that's buried in our name, because that is love and that is a pure state. What if we looked at everybody not as a competitor or as a threat? What if we looked at each other as a possible friend and a possible ally? How different would our world be? How different would our business world be if we viewed everyone through that lens?
I love that. I think it's a really nice reminder, especially for founders who are in such a hyper competitive mode. And of course, I understand being a founder myself, like it feels like a very scarce world in many ways, but it's almost like, to your point of, instead of looking at people as enemies who you have to take down, what would it be like to think that or to feel like you're really in a world of abundance? That's been really helpful, I think, just in the way that we approach other people in our space too. Like it's great to have more activity in your space. Like, yes, it's competition, but there's a certain amount of competition that is almost necessary to really mark whether you're in a legitimate space or not.
If you have an idea that is so original that nobody else has anything near that idea, that in the investment community, that's a bad sign, right?
Right? Yeah, it's really interesting.
And I do come from, besides the, KPMG experience, I've spent 30 years in executive recruiting, and there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of recruiters in the world, and they all specialize in slightly different things. And so I think also from a very early age, I recognized, oh, wow, yeah, of course. This is business, and companies are made of people, no matter what they do and what they sell.
Yeah.
And so of course, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of recruiters all trying to solve this human capital problem in different ways.
Yeah.
And even look at somebody that specializes in my same specialty as a threat, because there's more work than we can do, even in tough times.
Yeah.
And so, frankly, with excellent mentorship in an early stage, that's also where I'm very grateful. She really imbued in me this concept that anyone else in our profession that is elevating, treating people with kindness and respect, and really doing their job well, that elevates our whole function. And for all the recruiter haters out there, I get it. Sometimes it's been very dehumanizing, especially these last few years. But anybody who still has a heart and a soul and works hard to help each other, hey, you're my people.
Yeah. So you've mentioned recruiting a number of times, and I'd like to just better understand some of the challenges that, like, having observed this space over so many years, what are some of the challenges that you see in the recruiting space at the moment?
Massive.
Yeah.
So, I like to describe, I'm one of the OGs of technology, right? Having started out in the dot-com era, which is not when technology started, but for a lot of us, that's when it really became mainstream. And so all of these tools and systems, and even when I was in finance, I started in finance when Microsoft Excel was a brand new product. And so from being a teenager, I have been hearing the same thing. Oh, wow, this is going to 10x your productivity. This is going to give you all your time back. And has it really, though? Because what has ended up happening, and this is a huge mindset and cultural issue, it is not the technology's fault that we keep creating and believing that all of these extra tools and systems are making our lives just automatically better. So that is a big challenge that recruiters, being in the human capital business, back in the 90s, I could keep a lot of this information in my head, and we met everybody in person, and you'd have a nice 45-minute, let me get to know you, and you'd send 3 resumes to the client who did not expect 100 resumes, and they didn't expect it tomorrow. And so this is where we've had this 10xing and 100xing, and everybody needs to be a unicorn, and it just doesn't scale. And so I think if we go back to what is really happening and these concepts, that at the end of the day, we're still people and our brains have not changed that much, and that is a good thing. Let us embrace that, because we've lost in a lot of ways, staring at our screens all day, trying to manage our inboxes. That is not your purpose in life, to respond to every text immediately.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And it's just led to a lot of burnout. So this informs everything that we are building related to the future of work, where let's just recognizing that hiring is broken right now. Mm. And so layering more tools on top of tools and doing keyword matching and trying to, play a numbers game, that's not actually how recruiting works. Mm. And it's creating, we got to go the other way. That's all I'll say. Because but the burnout in all directions makes me really sad, because this is a people business. And I think we're all so overwhelmed and stressed on certain levels that we just are forgetting how to be people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting your point about, like, technology promising all these things, but then whether or not those time savings are actually happening and we're just then filling, right? It's like gas in a room. If there is more time, it just gets filled with more tasks and more emails and more urgency and whatever. But it is a problem. It's like, for example, these like meeting bots where it's like, okay, great, you can't go to that meeting, no problem, send your bot. And it's like, okay, great. So now we're like, we already had, before the pandemic, there were already too many meetings. People were not being efficient with their time. There were already too many meetings. And now that we have these bots, we can actually, instead of like taking a step back and thinking about our time and our resources and how we're spending those things, we're like, it actually, sure, have a meeting of bots, let the bots just talk, you know? And you're like, what are we talking about? You know?
It feels dystopian. There are so many things that we don't know are happening. So I was imagining that, there's all these biomes in my digestive tract that are doing a bunch of things that I'm not even aware of. And that doesn't bother me. But I think somewhere in all of the fear mongering and, what we're seeing and getting creeped out is like, yeah, it is freaky because it's different and it's strange and we don't understand it. But on the other hand, there is this opportunity to go, we shouldn't even be bothered with any of this stuff. Like, why am I trying to manually do all of these things on a computer screen where, how many of us are, like our bodies were not formed for this kind of interface.
Yeah.
And our mental health is suffering. And so like, it is just an opportunity. This has been a lot of the rhetoric here lately, is just to encourage people. First of all, take some deep breaths. It's free, and it is amazing what it will do for you. And then just question things. Use some critical thinking. And just, we used to use this term a lot in recruiting to help people make career decisions, which can be very challenging when you're managing, do I stay or do I go? And which salary offer? And what about my spouse and all this? So what if today is opposite day? Just take everything that you go, I have to do this, and this is how things are. And just literally flip it the other way. And even if it's silly, like, what if today I walked on my feet instead of my hands? It just like pick up these patterns of thinking. It's fun. I know we're talking about the recruiting space, but it very profoundly impacts the recruiting space because we keep layering all of this energy and not actually pulling way back and getting a perspective. Right. What are we trying to do here? Why is it business? Why is it hiring? Why is it work? What's our purpose? Like, these are fundamental questions that not only are they not a waste of time, but they are the questions that need to be asked. Right. Not like, oh God, do I need to take a ChatGPT certificate to better qualify for the next job? It's meaningless.
Right. It's hard to not be distracted by the noise, right? So how are you, like, there's just so much noise going on now, right? And people's attention is being pulled in so many different directions. So how do you address some of these challenges in your space, either through your own like LinkedIn, very impressive LinkedIn presence? I know you're working on a number of interesting projects, but what would you like to share in that regard?
So the future of work is really what we make it. But I went on a deep dive exploration this year and I said, okay, I'm having a visceral response to all of these tools on top of tools, and having the perspective of someone who's been in the industry for 30 plus years, where even from back in the day, we knew that a lot of what's going on with e-commerce and social gaming and social media and all these things, it's like, it was just a data grab. It was a lot of gamified. It was a lot of things that were tapping into how our brains normally work to be able to, frankly, build empires in these organizations. And now we're all, bringing in from past eras. We still get guilty if we're, not working Monday through Friday, right? So we have these past patterns that we're still bringing into this era. And now we do have, as much as everybody's talking about AI and we make jokes, like every time you say AI, you get $1. And so it's a big distraction, but it is also legitimately a force multiplier for everything that's going on with people. It's a big distraction. So if we keep taking the ways that we have looked at recruiting for the last 30 years, and say, I have a resume and I have a job description and I need to match that, and then I need to, have an interview. All of that is worked up to a point, but look look further back and go, even 40 or 50 years ago, that wasn't how it worked.
Hmm.
And so we can't keep just piling on and being like, well, this is how things are.
Right.
And so when we're looking to solve certain problems, I looked around and I saw so many tools on top of tools is my phrasing for it. It's like, yes, we need to solve mundane tasks, but a very dear friend of mine, I remember I was all excited. I hate my inbox. And so I got a tool that was going to organize it, right? And he just looked at me, brilliant, and said, well, why aren't you solving the problem at the source? Why do you have so many emails?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like even the smart kids in the room, sometimes we're in the stimulus response reactive mode going, oh, shoot.
Right.
So here's the thing, in terms of where the future of work is really headed. And we are looking to build something that is a pathway, because the reality 5 years from now, work looks very different, and it is already happening today. And that is why it informs liquid workforce. For example, the way that currency is happening. So how do people get paid is changing. What does even wealth look like if you don't have all your time and you're sitting on a pile of money, but you're sending it all, for taxes and insurance? Like, these are things that need to fundamentally change, and they are things that we're addressing with our platform. Simply put, there is an opportunity for the technology. AI is not software. It is a dynamic learning and semantics. And there's a lot of things that are coming out right now that are exciting, where a lot of the data scientists and the linguists and the communicators are actually, we've got a good competitive edge compared to a lot of technicians and software that is a very different type of technology. And you don't actually have to be technical to understand this. So that is the encouragement for everyone out there.
Right.
The playing field is leveled, and this is your opportunity. So with our platform, we are recognizing that interviewing and hiring and resumes and all of these things that we've been using for a few decades is going to fundamentally change. And to be able to take advantage of the way this technology learns, so that we can learn together and create upskilling that is bespoke and really understands you and knows you in a safe environment where you own your own data. That's what we're doing.
No, I mean, that's really powerful stuff. And it's I love your comment about, you don't have to be like a technical whiz to leverage these tools. They've really blown the way open for people to have a vision and then leverage the tools to bring that about, right? And that's it's a really exciting time. What are you excited about for the next 5 years?
I am excited. This is my red pill or blue pill conversation. So things can be true at the same time, because we all have different perspectives, and reality is mindset in many ways. So it is true that there is a massive power grab right now with industry elites in a sector that people like me have helped create. And 30 or 40 years ago, that was not our intention. We're a bunch of nerds and creative founder types that just wanted to solve cool problems. But here we are, fast forward, in an era of unicorns and massive data centers. So that is a legitimate concern. Everybody needs to understand what a digital twin is, and understand that the way technology is changing is as different as in the early 90s. We didn't have text and email and an internet, and look at us now and all the things we're doing, including this experience today.
Right.
So everyone needs to understand that if you don't take the power and help design this version of who you are, it will be determined for you, and that's extremely scary. The question was what I'm excited about. What I'm excited about is that this is also a massive opportunity for the playing field to be leveled, because we are in a world that hasn't existed in this way before. And there are many, many of my female friends, my gender spectrum, Black, brown, underserved communities, that you have an opportunity to get your voice heard in a way that hasn't always existed. And the pathway is to tap into what makes you a person, because nobody else can be who you are. And this natural curiosity, this continuous learning, this enthusiasm, these things that we have as little kids, and it gets squished out of us because we have to be grown up. That's the opportunity. And I'm super excited about this.
Right. I love that. I think that's a really important reframing. And I heard, I think it was actually my husband said this the other day. He was like, there will be people who rely almost exclusively on ChatGPT or Gen AI to develop their thoughts and their sense of themselves. And there's a risk in that because people will be getting similar information, right? It's like
and
a
it doesn't have
collective
perpetual memory,
right?
Besides the massive environmental concern of the LLMs, it has short-term memory.
Yeah.
And pattern matching, so it doesn't know you like you think it does.
Right, exactly. And so people who learn to use these tools for their strengths, but continue to develop themselves, going back to what we started with in this conversation as humans first, like that is the way, right? And so it's really interesting to keep that in mind. And I don't think it can be said enough.
100%. I have a very dear friend. I'm very much in arts and music and all of these other things that make us people. This person was very ill in their 20s, and they're now in their 50s, but they've been living on borrowed time ever since. And their interpretation of that near-death experience that continues was, I need to be the most talented and productive artist I can be. I'm going to lean into that because I have this opportunity and it's limited, and that's my gift back to the world. And it struck me on such a level to hear his story and collect his art and be part of this. And we don't all have to be that intense or dramatic, but I think on any level, if every human being woke up and was like, I want to be the best Rachel that I can be today. And do it again tomorrow and do it again the next day. Nobody is who you are. And I don't always know that we embrace that to the level that's awesome and has so much possibility.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a strong message. Annemarie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your perspective of experience, and then also just like really being deeply involved in some of these new and emerging technologies and AI. Anything else that you would like to share with our audience? Where can they find you? Where can they interact with you?
Absolutely. Our website is either dreammoreai.com or dreammore.io, and definitely all over LinkedIn and other socials. If you don't find me as Annemarie Penny, usually our handle on TikTok, Insta, et cetera, is Dream More Dreams. Glad to help everybody. We want to make the world a better place, and that is through being the best humans we can be.
Awesome. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your perspective. And as always, thanks to our audience. We'll see you next time.